This is an interesting quote because with everything going on in today's day and age, we need to be thinking about what does a most responsive to change mean to us? Good question, isn't it? In fact, this comes from the generalized quote of Darwin. So let's take a look at this real quick. It's not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. Pretty interesting quote, isn't it? So I love this quote because, first of all, it's eye-catching. It makes you think. It has some keywords in it that make you wonder. And actually, this quote's used a fair amount today, but it's also a misquote. Darwin apparently never said this exactly, but what Darwin did say was generally the same thing. So let's talk about a little bit about Darwin first. So Darwin was born in 1809 in England, died at the age of 73 in 1882. He's known for his contributions to the science of evolution. Did a lot of study at sea, different sea creatures, things like that. And as he progressed, started studying man a lot more. So this is an interesting concept that I think is really fascinating because it does talk a lot about how our minds work and how we do see our ability to adapt to change. So as we go into this week, I want you to think about, how do I adapt to change? There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of things happening that we're never going to go back to. Different ways of doing business that we're never going to go back to. I've said it a few times. I've heard the term quite a few times, sea change, as an SEA change. And really what that is a paradigm shift. Paradigm shift in business quite a bit. So, this quote, let's jump into the quote a little bit. It's good in several ways, because and some of the different misquotes of it talk about managing change, talk about adapting to change, talking about being willing to manage change, which is a big psychological step, a big step that a lot of people, a lot of businesses need to be getting over. And being responsive to change. And I really like that part. I really like the responsive to change part. Because, what we know is that we have to be responsive. We have to be willing to change and dealing with a changing environment. Doesn't necessarily mean we have to go in and make massive change, okay? Doesn't mean that we have to go in and be a disruptor or something like that. But what we do know is that change is a basic law of nature. Change is a basic law of nature. The seasons change. You look at rivers, you look at different movements of land, things like that. That's change. We're part of this whole thing. And you look at the migration of human beings just around the world. We're part of change. So we need to be responsive to change appropriately. We don't need to necessarily think that, okay, let's go in and just change everything. I mean, that's not how it works. We know that. How do we know that? I mean, just take a look at the COVID-19 situation. Who knows where it started, why it started, whatever started it. But ultimately, we can do that too. We can go in and change a whole bunch of stuff. The bottom line is we need to be responsive to change that happens. We could have an earthquake. We could have a volcano. We could have a hurricane. We could have a forest fire. We could have any other thing happen in nature that causes change. And we need to be responsive to that. So here's some ways to think about that. First of all, it's okay to change. We need to change. Okay. You're either going to change because of your effort, you're going to change because of external efforts, external influence, things like that that's going on. So let's see. I put down here, safe to say that we must recognize and take appropriate action or inaction based on our judgments of how that change impacts us, our cultures, economies, or whatever. Okay. Call it our businesses, whatever. If we choose to do nothing, sometimes choosing to do nothing is the best choice. That is still adapting to change. It's recognizing change. It's adapting to it and understanding that maybe you got ahead of the change by doing what you needed to do before the change occurred, or maybe the change isn't impactful, causing you to adapt to it. So think about that. There are some things in business that will change, some things in business that won't change. In fact, sometimes in some business, we're going to find that the fundamentals are what we end up going back to in a lot of business. If we don't change, here's the reality. We live with the options we choose. So first, let's get that beside us. We have to be okay with not changing if we don't want to. So question is, what do you choose? And with the changes we see in society, is it to do nothing right now? I don't think that's the case. Okay. I don't think us doing nothing right now with the COVID-19 crisis is the appropriate thing. So how did we change is the second question. Okay. Really the answer to that is we locked ourselves in our houses and to wait this thing out, to give it time to cycle. So really, let's think about how we let this cycle and what can we do while we're letting it cycle. How do we adapt to that change? So, we still have the ability to communicate. We have the ability to reach out. We have the ability to touch people, to communicate, to make adaptations in our businesses right now, even though we think, okay, our business is closed. Is it? Your customers are still available to you if you've set your business up. If you set your business up to communicate with those customers, you should be able to communicate with them right now. If you haven't, start setting it up to communicate with them. Start educating them. Education is value delivery. Value delivery. So I've been sitting on a lot of different webinars and seeing a lot of change going on in business. The majority of it is educating them about what you offer, how you offer it, how it enriches their life or solves their challenges. Okay. So think about that. So I mentioned disruptors. Don't try and be a disruptor. Be an adapter. Okay. Be an adapter, not a disruptor. And what you need to adapt to is society's desire for different value chain adjustments, value chain changes that are happening out there. And if you adapt to those value chain changes, then you start causing fundamental change in an industry. That change, that fundamental change in the industry might be a disruption to some, but it's not to you because you're adaptive. Okay. You're adaptive. So my point here, make the adjustments in your life, make the adjustments in your business, in your relationships, in everything that needs it. Focus on what needs to be done and stop watching. A lot of people are watching right now. Oh boy, we get to open up in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever. They're not going to be ready to open because they're going to wait until 2 to 3 weeks and go, okay, let's go dust everything off. Let's go see, let's go reopen the way that we originally were. Adapt and start your adaptation with communication. Adaptation starts with communication, asking the right questions, saying the right things, delivering the right value. So focus on what needs to be done. Again, we've all been given a big sign of change. And it's up to us to adapt to it. And those that adapt to this best will survive and thrive. That's my thought for the day. That's a big thought for the week. So think about that. Think about how will you adapt to this change that happened. Write it down. Pull out your business plan if you have one. If you don't, you better write one. Okay? But it's time to adapt to the change. Adapt. Let me put this back up because I think this is a really important thing to think about. Let's all have a great week. Be well, be safe, be strong, and think about this. As you enter the week, it's not the strongest species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. Can you adapt? Can you respond? See ya.